How would you like to be able to rebuild yourself from rock bottom? Aneta Waclaw will tell us how. She is an author, speaker, podcast host, passionate about mind body healing and personal transformation. Through Nourished Inside Out, her podcast and community, she helps people rebuild self confidence, process emotions, and create a healthier, more fulfilling life. So, Aneta, tell us, how can entrepreneurs rebuild themselves after hitting rock bottom? Heal Podcast with Lily Patrascu shares longevity and anti-aging techniques to stay young forever, increase energy, overcome addiction, and live your longest, best life ever. Shared by world's most innovative, alternative, and traditional health thought leaders, healers, and doctors. Discover quantum healing strategies to heal your mind, body, and soul.
Yeah, so for me, one of the biggest things was being aware, really having awareness on where you're currently at and being able to look at yourself in the mirror and say, this is where I'm at. It may not be exactly where I want to be, but it's okay because we all have to start somewhere and we all start from some point. And sometimes we have to hit rock bottom, and there's absolutely nothing to be ashamed of hitting rock bottom, because it's actually a wonderful place to be because the only place is up from there. So the first step is really acknowledge and be aware of where you're at.
Thank you. How does one know that you have actually hit rock bottom and it can't actually get worse than this?
We oftentimes get faced with setback after setback, and it may not be a pleasant thing, but once you feel like you have gotten to the point of burnt out or exhaustion, then you eventually have reached a point. Like, for example, I can speak on my experience of, I used to be a people pleaser. So I would like to give as much as I could to other people, places, and things around me. But eventually it got me to a point where I was so burnt out, I literally had nothing left in me to give. And that was my sign of, I'm at rock bottom. I need to fill my cup. So I would say a sign of being at rock bottom is being completely burnt out. And you've tried everything, you've faced setbacks, and you're just burnt out.
Thank you. What are the steps or the blueprint for someone to start coming out of rock bottom and complete burnout?
Yeah, for me, it was learning how to give back to myself. And that really goes back with learning what you like. What do you like to do? What kind of hobbies do you like? What kind of people do you like to associate with? What kind of music do you like? And those little things will eventually add up, because if you can't learn to fill up your cup, then you can't fill up other people's cups. So I always say, like, for me, like, the biggest thing was learning to rewire my mindset to a more positive one. And that actually started with positive affirmations. For example, I was in like a really unhealthy relationship, and that took a toll on me mentally with my thoughts and how I was talking to myself and how I viewed myself. So every day after I got out of the relationship, I would write on a Post-it note one positive affirmation, and I would stick it to the mirror. And then every single day I would add a new one. So every time I went into the bathroom, I would see a whole list of affirmations and get into the habit of really repeating that. So you get into the mindset of, you are worthy, you are beautiful, you are loved, those kinds of things.
Thank you. What's the reason for which some people hit rock bottom? Do you find that it's because actually that's the universe's or God's or, Allah's or whoever you believe in, that's their way of actually redirecting you to a positive outcome? Or is there a different reason why certain people hit rock bottom?
Definitely. I would say that there's so many lessons there, and it's nothing you should be ashamed of, because if you hit rock bottom, it's actually a blessing, because I always say if something works out for you, it's direction. If it doesn't work out for you, it's redirection. And if you've tried this one specific path or this one relationship and it just wasn't working out, try to find the positive in every setback. Try to find a good lesson on why that had happened instead of going into victim mentality. And that really helps shift your focus to look for opportunities to pave a better path for yourself.
Thank you. Why is it so important to reaffirm new positive beliefs? Is it because hitting rock bottom was a part of you needing to heal something? So maybe perhaps you've always believed something negative about yourself, and that's why you actually hit rock bottom? And is that why affirmations are so important for, you can say, recreating your future?
Affirmations are so important because they start to rewire your mindset. Whether you believe it or not in the beginning, force yourself to say positive and nice things to yourself. If you have a bad attitude towards yourself, think about those thoughts that you tell yourself and ask yourself, would you tell it to your coworker or would you tell it to your boss or somebody that you love and care about? And if you wouldn't say it to any of those people, why are you saying it to yourself? At first, I didn't believe them fully, but I forced myself to say them until I started to believe them. So I think it's a really powerful tool to start rewiring your mindset.
Thank you. What other techniques or tools are there for someone to start rebuilding themselves after rock bottom?
One of the biggest things is finding a community, whether you're finding a new hobby or getting involved in a new local group or an online group. I highly recommend finding some kind of community where you can be yourself and a place where people can accept you for who you are. Because if you go to a place where people are friends with you or you're friends with them, but they don't accept you for who you are, you're not going to feel 100% safe and you're not going to feel 100% confident. So I recommend finding a community that you can be yourself. You can be your goofy self, say the jokes that you do, and enjoy life in those aspects.
Thank you. What other techniques are there for someone to rebuild themselves?
Yeah, for me, it was also taking time for myself and understanding that I don't need to be around people all the time and really listening to positive podcasts about self-help or motivation or reading books and even if it's starting a new career, like if you've had a career in your mind that you've always wanted to start, but you were unsure of because you were on a different path in the past, it's okay to restart. That's one of the things that I love to teach is that you're never too old and you're never too late to start again. The more times that you start, you're not starting from scratch, you're starting from experience. And I think that's a really valuable lesson that most people need to understand is what's everything that you have encountered up until this point has been shaping you and building you to the person that you're meant to be in the future. So, for example, my previous background was in hairstyling. I loved being a hairstylist. I was there with my clients all day, every day. I loved this atmosphere, but I also noticed that I love to educate people. And I knew that working behind the chair, I couldn't fully educate because I can only take as many clients as I can in a day. And sometimes that would even be two, depending on the service. So then eventually I switched careers and got into writing and podcasting so I can help educate a wider audience as well. So it's okay to restart a new path.
Thank you. What were the hardest parts about rebuilding yourself, and how did you overcome those?
The hardest part was trying to heal in a place that broke me. And when I left my unhealthy relationship in the past, for me, something that was really fulfilling was travel because I was able to go somewhere where nobody knew who I was and I can present to them who I really want to be or who I really am on the inside. They don't know anything about me based on my past. So it was really fulfilling for me to travel. And I'm from Chicago. So when I was living in Chicago after I left the relationship, I was trying to heal in that city, but that city also carried a lot of pain and heartbreak with it. So I needed to leave, and I did after about a year and a half. And that's also been really fulfilling, is going somewhere where nobody knows me so I can start again.
Thank you. How did you handle setbacks and obstacles on your way to coming back up?
I would always look at them as stepping stones, something you can't take them personal, because fail is first attempt in learning and fear is false evidence appearing real. So 85 to 90% of the things you fear don't come true. And if you're carrying fear around with you, it's all in your mindset. So that just goes back to, are you choosing to see the good, or are you choosing to see the bad? And it really goes back to keeping your mindset straight.
Thank you. Did you have a support system when you were building yourself back up?
Yeah, so I'm very thankful for my parents, because they've always been a great support. And, they may not understand all of my decisions all the time, but they eventually come to see the bigger picture. And I'm really thankful that I've had them. And then I also had a really good friend at the time who was there with me through a lot of like the major events of leaving the relationship and starting over in the city that I grew up in up until I left the city. So that's also been really rewarding as well.
Thank you. How can someone set up a few support systems that will allow them to recreate themselves from this new reality of being, appreciated? And maybe the reason why someone has reached rock bottom is because they feel underappreciated, or maybe they've done too much for everyone else and not so much for themselves. How can they start like recreating this reality of themselves?
I think one of the biggest things that has helped me is learning to heal, like understand and be aware that it's okay on the challenges that you went through, but there is a brighter future out there. And when you heal, you are able to communicate your story in healthy ways. And once you're able to communicate your story in a healthy way, then you're going to come across people who have similar stories or people who have similar backgrounds. And a lot of times you're probably going to meet them online, and that's actually beautiful too. I've met so many incredible people online that I've been friends with and been able to build relationships with, because I've learned how to heal and communicate my story in a healthy way. So that could even go back to writing online or blogging or writing a book, or just, like I said, searching for another community of people you can relate with on hobbies and topics. And that will also help you create a better support system.
Thank you. For those rebuilding themselves back up after extreme failure, maybe financial failure or relationship failure or some other personal failure, maybe something related to their studies or their work, what do you advise them to do to rebuild their life back up?
Don't quit. I honestly, it's hard for me to believe in failure. The only time you fail is when you quit. Michael Jordan didn't become the biggest star because he quit. He failed his way to the top. So if you're failing, you're actually on the right path. Fail is first attempt in learning. So fail your way to the top. That's how you learn. The biggest thing is don't give up, and to know that everything is always working in your favor. Just don't give up.
Thank you. So a lot of times when you have a business failure, you may need to disappoint a lot of people, because let's say you take money for delivering something, and because of, lack of planning, or because of, lack of experience, or some other factors, maybe the venue costs too much, or the event costs too much, you're not able to deliver for that money, and then you disappoint some people, and because of that your reputation suffers, and because of that you look like a scammer, and because of that it's like I find recovering from failed reputation is can be so hard. So I wonder, what do you suggest for people that want to rebuild themselves from a really bad reputation, not intentionally, not that they wanted to be a scammer, not that they wanted to have this happen to them, but they just simply failed on so many different aspects in their business?
You can always start by taking it one step at a time, by learning to rebuild one connection at a time and really instill that trust and that credibility. And it's okay to also be upfront and honest. Like, hey, like this was the goal. The goal wasn't met. And I apologize. I don't want to ruin our relationship and I don't want to ruin trust in between us. But at the same time, the goal wasn't met for this specific project. So what can we do to grow from here? And how can we build a stronger relationship? I think honesty is the biggest thing to keep that trust. Because if you're not honest, then, and you try to do things really quick under the table or behind people's backs, they're going to lose trust with you a lot faster rather than you just being upfront and honest in the beginning.
Thank you. How can someone rebuild themselves from rock bottom if they are still surrounded by people that put them down at their workplace, in their relationship, maybe their partner, people, their family, people? There are some people that you can't just like get rid of, okay, because they're like entrenched in your network. How can you let go of those toxic relationships or minimize the negative impact on your morale so that you can rebuild yourself faster?
One of the biggest things is that you don't have to be best friends with everybody. I understand if you're in a workplace at a big corporate job or at a bit like I worked in really big salons, you can't be friends with everybody. But what you can do is you can respect and love them from a distance. You don't have to share everything about your personal life with everyone. Excuse me. You don't have to tell everybody all the details that are going on in your life. Just keep it simple. It's okay to keep some relationships surface level. And even if they were deeper to some extent at some point, it's okay to reel them in for a little bit and keep them more surface level. Because at the end of the day, not everybody wants to see you grow. And people who say they want to see you grow and they want to see you succeed, they may not always mean it on the inside. So instead of fully cutting people off and just saying, I'm done with you, just say, that's okay. I respect you for where you're at. I hope you can respect me for where I'm at and where I'm going. And I'm just going to keep a little distance. We don't have to have bad blood. We can still keep this connection, but there's just going to be a little distance.
Thank you. What about in the case where the negative people are actually your family or your lover, your husband, people that are not so easy to get rid of?
Yeah, I completely understand. I got married when I was 21 years old to a guy who didn't like me. And his every single day he said something negative about me. He said it to my face, whether it was to my face or to the people around us. And one of the hardest things for me in that relationship was understanding why he was doing that. But what I realized after, when I left the relationship when I was 23, I was like, this is too much. We need to go our own ways. So we did. And one of the biggest things was learning to forgive them and to just know that they are a mirror. So if they're being negative to you, it's because they're projecting on how they feel about themselves onto you. It has absolutely nothing to do with you. So if you are married to somebody who is not the nicest person or they don't treat you with respect, well, I highly recommend to take them off the pedestal, because a lot of times we tend to put other people on pedestals before us. And take them off the pedestal, take a step back and see and evaluate the situation. Is this person adding value to my life, or is this person not? Do they contribute to your life in a way that it makes sense to figure it out? Or does it make sense to go your separate ways? Because if it makes sense to figure it out, then there's different options like therapy or learning how to communicate in different ways, and yoga, meditation, going to work out together. But if you guys are not adding value to each other, then it just might make sense to go separate ways. But I will never tell anybody what to do. So if you have somebody in those kinds of situations, I highly recommend just love on them, and you can give them the education, you can give them your perspective, but support and appreciate them because they're figuring it out for themselves too.
Thank you. What are the best positive routines or habits for someone to implement so that they can come back from rock bottom faster?
One of the biggest things for me was listening to positive podcasts while I sleep, whether it's like a sleep meditation podcast or something a little bit more chill, like a meditation podcast. I like to help keep those playing at night because it helps keep my subconscious in a more positive state. And also, first thing when I wake up, I like to listen to a podcast and listen to some positive and uplifting music. Those are things that really help me as well. Read a book and really start the day with mindfulness and gratitude, because when you're grateful for what you have, you'll be able to welcome more gratitude and abundance in. Because if you're not grateful with the small, you're not going to be able to be grateful for the big.
Thank you. Are there any other techniques or methods for someone to rebuild themselves after rock bottom?
It's really different and a unique journey for everybody, and everybody is on their own unique journey. And I have a lot of compassion. For example, if somebody is in a situation where they're at rock bottom and they don't know what to do, for me, I always run to my faith. I would always talk to God and let Him guide the way. That's me. Everybody believes in something different. And I highly encourage people to have some kind of spiritual level or some kind of spiritual relationship, because at the end of the day, we all have two choices every single day to believe in one of two things that we cannot see. You can believe in faith or you can believe in fear. And for me, I chose to believe in faith and know that it was going to get better. And know that if you do look at people who are really successful, they have hit rock bottom too. The only difference is they chose not to stay there and to get back up and try again.
Thank you. What would you say to people who tend to hit rock bottom and then they wallow in it for many years, or they feel stuck in a rut? How can people who are stuck in the freeze mode come out of that? Aside from everything you talked about, is there anything like a magic pill they can take, or like any sort of like action that will get them out of the freeze mode?
Yeah, it really just starts with you. It starts with what you put in yourself. I worked at the salons for 4.5, 5 years, and it's easy to get your hair done. It's easy to get your nails done, your eyelashes, but nobody talks about the conversation that you have with yourself. And the conversation you have with yourself is the most important one. So if you can't learn to be kind to yourself and talk positive to yourself, you're not going to be able to project that on the outside. So like I said, it really, no magic pill, just starts with you and your thoughts and your mindset.
Thank you. What about if you feel really hurt, disappointed in yourself, disappointed in the behavior of others, angered, maybe you feel resentment, you're sad, maybe you feel like almost like your entire zest for life is gone and you don't know what step to take? What would you have someone do to kind of rebuild themselves from that kind of rock bottom where they don't see a way out?
Know that it's not your fault. It's not, and it's not a bad place to be. It's so easy to get into the victim mentality. Why is this happening? Why is that person being mean to me? Why is so and so acting like this, it's never your fault. It can also go back to lacking boundaries. I lacked boundaries for so long, and that was also causing people to take advantage of me all the time. I heard this quote, I think Nick Cannon said it, and he said, "Don't take my sweetness for weakness." I think a lot of times when we're kind to people, they think we're weak, but but the reality is we're not really weak. We're being kind because that's who we are. And you really have to be careful with who you give your kindness to, because not everybody will understand or know how to handle it. So be kind to yourself and be kind to others. And that will really start to open up a lot more opportunities. But you have to believe it, because if you don't believe it, then it won't come true.
Thank you. Tell us where entrepreneurs can find you.
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at Aneta.Waclaw or Substack. I write every day, and I have a newsletter that I send out every week at Nourished Inside Out. And then my podcast is available on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube at Nourished Inside Out.
Thank you. Follow me for more interviews with world's most innovative health change makers to live your healthiest life ever.